Okay, the big thing about 10.1 is that you have to remember that we're in complex numbers, okay? So to get q by itself, I'm going to take the square root of both sides. You always put a plus or minus in front. So q is going to equal to plus or minus the square root of -4. Now the square root of 4 itself is 2. The square root of a negative is I. So the answer is plus or minus 2i. So try to remember that the square root of -1 is I. So the negative comes out as an I, the 4 comes out as a 2, and you always have the plus or minus. Quadratics have 2 answers. Sometimes it's repeated, but it's 2 answers. Alright, now when you do this square root method, you have to remember that you have to isolate it first. So you're going to move the 4. Again, you have to remember that we're in complex numbers. So once it's isolated, you can take the square root of both sides. Just remember when you do that to put the plus or minus on the front of the number that you're square rooting. Alright, so on this side, the square and the square root cancel. The square root of 25 is 5. The square root of a negative is I. Now you want to get the c by itself, so you want to move it over to the other side. It really doesn't matter if you put it in the front or the back of the other term, but I would suggest we traditionally put the real part in front of the complex part. Now remember, I is a radical. It's a fancy nickname for a radical, so you cannot combine a radical and a non-radical. So remember just to put them like neighbors. This is shorthand. This means you have -3 plus 5i and -3 minus 5i. This has 2 complex numbers as an answer. Alright, so again, when you do the square root method, you have to isolate the squared term no matter how fancy or big it is. And again, we're in complex numbers. So you're going to take the square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. The square root and the square cancel. The square root of 49 is 7. The square root of the negative is an I. Now you need to move the 11 to the other side. Try to keep it in the front. And now you have to divide off the 6 because you don't have g by itself yet. Now I would take this and give you guys full credit for this, but technically complex numbers are supposed to be written, the real part and the complex part are supposed to be written separately. So you're supposed to write it like this and make sure it's reduced. But again, if you hand it in like this, I'm fine. You're going to get full credit. I'm just happy that you're understanding how to do the steps and you're getting to the answer. Okay, gang, that's it for the 10-1 questions.